Peace, everybody. What's good? My name is Willie Green. Welcome to Brooklyn, New York. Welcome to my studio right here at the Greenhouse. And I'm going to give y'all an inside look into my process for doing a remix. I'm going to show y'all how to take one person's record and turn that thing into your own. This is how you turn one hit into two. Let's do it. So step one, you got to find a record. Preferably a really good one. The better the original, the better your remix is going to be. And luckily, we got exactly that by a great dear friend of mine, Rebecca Loby. This song called Everything Changes. Go check out the original. You want to be really familiar with the original record when you go to remix it, so you know what things to emphasize, what things to focus on, and what things that maybe you can let go. First things first, you want to open up Cubase, and if you're anything like me, you probably got a template to get things started for your production. We'll run through mine real fast. So I got some tracks open. I've got a couple mono audio tracks. If I want to throw in a vocal or any kind of idea, a bass line or whatever, I want to have those tracks handy. Same thing for loops. I've got a bass synth. I've got the Monument. I've got Contact, Backbone for my drums, and then Hallion for kind of a general synth. Basically everything I could need: bass, drums, keys, pads, everything I've got right here ready to go on my template, so I don't have to fool around with calling up stuff. If I'm feeling creative, I just open up that track and I'm ready to go. If we take a look at my mixer, you'll see I've got obviously those same tracks, and then I've got some subgroups. If I start grouping things together and routing things right off the very jump, when I go to mix, things are already going where they're supposed to be. So I've got a couple drum buses here. If I use Backbone or if I open up Groove Agent or something, I might want to route the drums to two different places. All my loops are going to this loops group. That's a good place for it. I've got some effects. We'll come back to the effects in a second. And then I've got my subgroups, and this really comes into play during mixing, but again, we set it up in advance. All my drums go to the drum group. Subs is going to be for basses or 808s, anything that's really low down there. Music is all other instruments, lead vocals, backgrounds, and then these last two, all my instrumental tracks, drums, subs, and music all come down to instrumental. And then Vox is what you think it is, leads and backgrounds. And the reason that I have these set up from the very beginning, so when I go to print my mix at the end, as opposed to having to figure out groups or whatever at the end, I can just bounce these tracks and I automatically have stems for everything that I've done. So that's just a little time saver just to keep me ahead of the game. And then of course, everything's going to my stereo out, to my mix bus. I've got my standard setup that I keep on my mix bus. We'll talk about that more in the mix. But this way I know from the very beginning, things are sounding as close to being a record as they can as I'm working. So as I'm producing, things are already sounding right to me. I know they're generally in the right place, so I can make better decisions because I already know what the record sounds like. So once we've got the template, which we start with, then it's time to go ahead and drop in the tracks that we get from the artist. So in this case, we've got a reference instrumental and we've got the lead vocal. On top of that, I was very lucky, I wanted the background separated. I asked for the background separated. And then I got the original stems from the original mix. You may or may not get this if you're doing a remix. You may just have just the vocal, but I like to have the option to be able to pull certain things out of the original song. Maybe I want to loop up a guitar or take a certain drum break or a certain drum hit and use that in my remix to reference back to that original. So having the original stems lets me do that very easily and quickly. So we drop them all in, and then the most important part of your remix setup is getting everything lined up to the grid. If your original track isn't on the grid, and particularly those vocals, as you start to produce your loops and produce your track, things are not going to line up. You have to be on the grid. Luckily, Rebecca provided me with the tempo, so I know we're at 107. You just put that on there, drop everything in, and then we're good to go. If not, Cubase has the tools to allow you to do that. You can use the fancy tempo detection panel. Super simple. You highlight the track you want to analyze. In this case, that's going to be the original instrumental. And hit analyze. It's going to detect for you. And then if we go right back to the top here and turn our click on, so that's obviously a little fast. Divide that thing by 2. now we're locked right in to our original instrumental. And if all the other tracks are lined up properly to that, which they are, now everything is on a grid as Cubase has given us. Generally that comes in at 1/4. We'll make that 4/4, how the song is. And boom, Bob's your uncle. Now we're on the grid. What I would do is just go all the way through and make sure every beat throughout the entire song lines up. So when I start layering in my loops and stretching things out, looping things out, I know it's going to hit every time. In this case, we don't necessarily need that tempo track because we know what the original is, but that's the quick and easy way to make that happen for you. We're going to keep this original tempo. It has a good feel to me there, but let's say we do want to change the tempo on this remix. Well, once we've got our new tempo track that we put in, where the grid is now aligned to the instrumental, well, let's highlight these tracks. Go ahead and highlight all of them. And we can set definition from tempo. So now everything is basically time stretchable to whatever we want. So this is locked to the tempo. Let's say we want to slow this thing way down.
I was king of the world for a minute or two, on top of the mountain, and I liked the view.
You know, so maybe we can take it down to real, slow jam style, or let's crank that thing up.
I was king of the world for a minute or two, on top of the mountain, and I liked the view. High on power, drunk on wine, beloved.
But for our purposes, we'll keep it at the original tempo. So the next part of the setup is we're going to add a marker track and we're going to outline the entire form of the song. That way I know later on, okay, I want to fly this synth to all the choruses later. I know exactly where the choruses are. Oh, let's dive into the bridge. Well, okay, here's the bridge. Boom. So it's just a matter of listening all the way through the record and just dropping markers, putting them right on the grid and just labeling them. This is, I know, a little tedious. You want to dive in and start throwing those 808s in there, but it's important to have your roadmap locked in so you always know where you are and it's easy to move around and manipulate your song. So we've got our markers, and then the next step is going to be the chord track. I want to make sure that any bass or keys or anything that I'm putting in here are matching the changes of the song, right? It's not a rap song. There are certain chord changes that we need to follow. And so we go through with the chord track and just insert the chords. I got the changes from the artist, but if not, you can listen and kind of do it by ear. Or if you have something like mixed in key or something like that, figure out your changes. Now I'm going to take out the instrumental, and I've just got a piano sound that we're dealing with just so I can kind of hear the changes. We may or may not keep that piano sound in the mix, but just to start. Let's jump forward. Things happen a little more.
Turn down offers you don't refuse. Ignored the gossip, deplored the news. Should have seen how quick they cut me loose. If only they had told me. Yeah, if only they had told me that everything changes.
So what's dope with the chord track is now we're starting to manipulate the song. So I got the changes from the artist, but I wanted some different textures in there. So I can go through, like in the chorus, I can play with my harmonics. So sure, that's a B major, but I want B major 7, and then we're gonna throw the 9 on there. I want a little tension up there to make it funky.
Everything changes.
Right, so then that goes down to the E minor there. So, this is where I'm starting to shape the song. It's not just what came into me, but I'm really starting to work with it and make it my own. So our next step after this is we're going to start putting some drums in here. We're going to start putting some other stuff in and turn this from that song into this song. Stay tuned. We'll be back. Peace.